Hello there, good evening and welcome to the news at 6. I'm Tracy Shilshi and in the next 30 minutes I'll be getting you the day's top developing stories. Let's start with the headlines. Amid disruptions led by the Congress, government's attempts to table the GST bill get stalled in Rajya Sabha. After suggesting that Parliament should get down to business, Mulayam does a U-turn, warns the government of disruptions on caste census. Supreme Court rules aadhaar card is not mandatory for citizens, says it will be optional to avail all welfare schemes except PDS and LPG distribution. Chennai-born Sundar Pichai is named the new CEO of Google, joins the elite group of Indian origin people holding top posts in global organizations. And battling a severe economic slowdown and stock market slump, China devalues Yuan by 2% against the dollar. The government's attempt to get the Constitution Amendment Bill on GST cleared in Rajya Sabha was unsuccessful today. Congress raised objection over the inclusion of this bill in the revised list of business. Finance Minister Arun Jaitley once again accused the key opposition party, the Congress, for deliberately scuttling the bill.
The much-awaited 122nd Constitution Amendment Bill, which is the first step in the rollout of the GST regime, was listed by the government in the revised list of business in the upper house for Tuesday. After passing the test in the Lok Sabha, the bill needed a two-third majority in the Rajya Sabha to clear passage. However, the main opposition party, Congress, objected to it, saying no time has been allocated by the Business Advisory Committee and hence it should not be taken up.
Today's revised list of business has listed this Constitution 122nd Amendment Bill, for which no time has been allocated. I have confirmed it has not come in the Bulletin, it has not come before the House. No time was allocated in the Business Advisory Committee, nor this issue was even discussed. So I take very strong objection to that, sir, that this is violation of the rule.
Finance Minister Arun Jaitley stood up for moving the bill amidst the din and accused the Congress of stalling the economic growth of the country.
That they want to stall the economic progress of this country. The issue relating to the External Affairs Minister is merely a pretext. The real reason is they don't want Indian economy to grow, and that is why section after section they have been looking for one pretext or the other to make sure that the GST legislation, which will give a boost to India's GDP and economy, is not passed. If the Congress party wants the economy of this country to slow down, when every political party is in support of it, they must candidly say so. They don't need any pretext in order to say this.
With Congress members shouting slogans in the well, Deputy Chairman adjourned the House, saying the Constitution Amendment Bill can't be taken up in pandemonium.
This being a Constitution Amendment Bill, I cannot proceed in pandemonium. Therefore, I am going to adjourn the House.
Vishal Dahiya's report for Rajya Sabha Television.
7 a.m. on Wednesday, the 12th of...
Well, for more on this, let's speak to our correspondent Vishal Dahiya, who's in fact been tracking all those developments that took place in Parliament earlier today. Vishal, by the looks of it, of course, it doesn't seem that in the remaining 2 days any business is going to get conducted, despite the government trying its best to pass at least the GST bill.
Well, that's what exactly it looks like as of now, Tracy. But if you look at the possibilities for the government, they're pretty less. The window is getting smaller with each passing moment. Just 2 days left. The government, is now desperately trying to get this bill cleared, which is Constitution's 122nd Amendment. Now, this is going to be the first step in the rollout of the GST regime. And this is a very crucial step. That is why the urgency is being shown from the government. The Select Committee has submitted its report, and that is why the government has, tried to introduce this bill today. An attempt which was unsuccessful. Now, with the 2 remaining days, obviously the government is likely to go ahead and make one more attempt, or maybe try and at least push it through even on the last day as well. But given the condition, or the situation rather, inside the House, wherein the Congress, the main opposition party, is mood to let the House, proceedings go smoothly. Their demand still being unfulfilled from the government side as far as the earlier two, issues of Vyapam and Lalit Gate scam is concerned. The demand of resignations is, far from being fulfilled by the government. The government has made it clear that there is no question of anyone resigning. So obviously, the respective stands which have been taken by the government and the opposition in today's context, it seems really highly unlikely that, apart from smooth functioning of the House, the GST bill even will get to see the light of the day.
At this point, what's the government strategy, Vishal? We do know that Mamata Banerjee is in the capital. She, of course, has always been in favour of the GST. Last week, Narendra Modi met the AIADMK chief, Tamil Nadu chief minister. And you've got, of course, Mulayam Singh Yadav, who's, of course, still wavering on his stand to stick with the opposition. What is the government trying to do?
Well, if you look at the numbers, the figures in the upper house, they're not in favor of the government. And this is a constitutional amendment bill. It would require two-thirds majority. So obviously the government would be looking towards the smaller parties, the regional parties for their support. And if you look at today's situation, then it was none other than the Congress who were objecting to the GST bill. There was no objection from the TMC. There was no objection from the BJD. Even Samajwadi Party members were not raising any objection. So clearly, this is something which is indicative of the fact, and these parties have already made it, clear in the, in the earlier days as well, that they are in favor of the GST bill. They want the GST bill to be cleared. But one more, block which might stand with the Congress in its opposition to the GST bill can be the left parties. They have given a dissent note to that select committee when it was the final report was submitted. So as far as numbers are concerned, if the House functions smoothly, there is no pandemonium, there is order in the House, then, given the fact that most of, or rather many of the regional parties are in favor of the GST bill being cleared, the government might have numbers on its side. So we'll have to wait and watch as to what exactly transpires on the floor of the House, because many of these, smaller parties are not revealing their final take.
Their cards is yet. We'll have to wait and see, like you're saying. Vishal Daya, thanks so much for joining us with those details. And talking about that big regional party, Samajwadi Party chief Mulayam Singh Yadav may have received a lot of praise from the Prime Minister for suggesting that Parliament get down to business. But just hours later, he did a U-turn, warning the government of new disruptions. He's insisting now that the government release the findings of the caste census.
ये अब संघर्ष जब छिड़ी गया है, चर्चा हुई है, तो हम लोग अब पीछे हटने वाले नहीं हैं। यही हमारी मांग है।
Samajwadi Party chief Mulayam Singh Yadav has had a change of heart. When he gave this soundbite, only a few hours had passed since the Prime Minister had praised him for standing with the government in wanting Parliament to function.
मुलायम सिंह यादव जी का आभार व्यक्त किया और उनके साथ कई राजनीतिक पार्टियां जिन्होंने ये महसूस किया है कि देश के गति को रोकने का एक बड़ा षड्यंत्र, एक बड़ा प्रयास है, और ये सभी राजनीतिक पार्टियां जिन्होंने इस बात को महसूस किया है कि देश की गति बढ़े, देश का विकास हो, उनके प्रति अभिनंदन व्यक्त किया है।
If Yadav was fed up of the Congress disrupting proceedings continuously over the Vyapam and Lalit Gate scandals, he has decided to spring a new one on the government. He now wants the government to release the findings of the vast census that collected socio-economic and caste data or face more protests. RJD and JDU members joined the protesting SP members.
आप पता लगाइए, ज़्यादा में जात पात में भेद नहीं रखते हैं और न हम विश्वास करते हैं कि हम लोग समाजवादी पार्टी में हैं, समाजवादी लोग हैं। समाजवादी पार्टी किसी स्तर पर गैर बराबरी पसंद नहीं करते हैं, उसके लिए संघर्ष लगातार डॉक्टर रजिया के नेतृत्व में लेके आज तक लड़ रहे हैं।
They want to pass this bill without any discussion. That is the point of dispute. So that we have opposed. We have said that is not democratic, and the rules of conduct of business in the Parliament must be followed.
The monsoon session of Parliament ends on Thursday, and so far virtually no business has been addressed because the Congress has delivered daily protests within the House, and they have found the support of most other opposition parties. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
In other news, the Supreme Court has allowed the centre to link the Aadhaar card with the PDS, especially distribution of food grains, kerosene oil and LPG. However, the court made it clear that the card will not be mandatory for availing any other social benefit schemes. The Constitution Bench of the Supreme Court also said that personal information of the card holders will not be shared with any agency for any purpose except for criminal investigation. The interim order was passed by a three-judge bench. It has referred the matter to Constitution Bench for determining whether right to privacy is a fundamental right.
Wide publicity will be given by the government and all concerned that Aadhaar is not mandatory for citizens. The second direction that has been given is that production of Aadhaar will not be insisted on by the government or any other authority.
Now to the big economic story. And China has devalued its currency by nearly 2%. Currencies across the world were impacted by China's surprise move. The sudden devaluation is the largest in 2 decades and comes amid a period of slower economic growth and increased stock market volatility in China. Yuan was reeling at a near 3-year low against the US dollar. China's central bank said that the nearly 2% depreciation is based on a new way of managing the exchange rate that better reflected market forces. However, analysts suspect that the devaluation has been announced to boost exports in the world's second biggest economy. The slowdown in exports threatens China's 7% economic growth target for this year, though. The country is currently growing at the slowest pace in decades. A weaker yuan will make Chinese goods less expensive in foreign markets and may boost exports.
As a result of the strong yuan, because it's linked to the US dollar, Chinese exports have become very expensive. There was a study that in 10 years, China's costs increased by 8.5 times. So China's manufacturing cost is only marginally lower than in the US. So this actually makes China's exports uncompetitive.
Well, for more on this story, we've got Shubhamoy Bhattacharjee, who's the executive editor at the Financial Express, joining us in studio this evening. Shubhamoy, thanks for joining us here. First of all, give us a sense of how this has come as a surprise for the global economy, considering the fact that China has said that they are going to be seeing a slowing down of its own economy, reducing its GDP growth as well.
Yeah, Tracy, I would say that the devaluation today is in part of a series of steps that the Chinese government has been taking. For instance, a few weeks ago, we had the movements in the stock market, because of it the Chinese government moved in to immediately put a series of rapid blocks on how the shares could be traded. Today's devaluation, first of all, is very big. But more than that, what it does is it is not about what the current export figures are. I would suspect that they seem to feel that the exports are a lot more worse than the figures do seem to indicate, which means that they are looking for even longer term corrections.
All right. Give us a sense now of how do we see this impacting the Indian economy? Or if at all do we see an impact on it? Yes.
Yeah, right, Tracy. The first thing that I would say is that a cheaper renminbi immediately means that Indian exports to China becomes costlier. And considering that we have a trade relation of about $100 billion odd, which means that our exports immediately to China become costlier. So that's the first thing. That means our trade deficit becomes larger with China, which is already a very huge one. It can cross about $50 billion at the current pace. Now, all this means that the ability of Indian exporters, and remember, they are also coming out from a situation where exports have been rather too flat. So if the devaluation actually causes not only China, but volatility in other currencies, then we have got a series of fires all around on the export market. And to that extent, since exporters account for a large amount of our organized sector employment, the cascading impact is rather bad.
There's also another view that, China is making this, like you were pointing out, of course, this is just a series of steps that it is taking So this is not something that has come as a surprise even to the Chinese economy. I mean, even to the Chinese financial experts. But some are also calling it as perhaps a slowdown really of the China story that we've been seeing for the past decade at least. Is this the beginning of that slowdown for it as far as a world financial economic power that it was for quite a few years now?
China has been trying to slow down for quite some years. It was something which they tried earlier, they didn't succeed. And now they have come down to a little less than 7%, which is what they were anticipating. The problem is that the weaknesses in the Chinese economy, in the financial sector, is something that we don't know about, simply because there's not adequate data. So whether the slowdown is happening is not the question, because that's already happening, as you pointed out.
Yes.
The bigger problem is whether the slowdown would go to be far more deeper than the Chinese government, their planning body, the NDRC, is willing to accept as a reasonable pace of slowdown. And unless those questions are settled, that's the reason are becoming topsy-turvy, that these answers are not coming out, and they don't seem like coming out very soon. And because of that, since everybody is sort of anticipating, the world market is frankly being thrown into quite a bit of again, I use the word uncertainty, in dealing with what is happening in China.
All right, we'll leave it there for now. Shubhamoy Bhattacharjee, thanks so much for joining us and helping us understand the story further. We'll, of course, have to wait and see in the coming weeks how does this affect India, at least. Meanwhile, there's some good news coming in. Another feather in India's cap. Chennai-born Sundar Pichai has been named as the new CEO of Google following a restructuring at the techno giant. Larry Page, the co-founder of Google, will now be heading the parent company Alphabet. Sundar Pichai has been working with Google for over a decade and has been associated with a number of its key projects. Take a look.
Indians worldwide had a reason to cheer Google's restructuring on Tuesday after the company named Chennai-born Sundar Pichai its new CEO. A BE degree holder from IIT Kharagpur, 43-year-old Pichai did his master's from the Stanford University and MBA from the Wharton School of Business. Pichai joined Google in the year 2004, the year it launched Gmail. In 2008, he led the launch of the market-beating Chrome browser. Thereafter, rising rapidly in Google, going on to become senior vice president, before being put in charge of supervising all Google apps, including Gmail and Google Drive, and also Android. His promotion to product chief in October 2014 made him second in command to Google's co-founder Larry Page. And that's why, announcing his appointment to the top job in a glowing blog post, Page said, and I quote, "Pichai has really stepped up since October of last year, when he took on product and engineering responsibility for our internet businesses. Sergey and I have been super excited about his progress and dedication to the company. And it's clear to us and our board that it's time for Sundar to be the CEO of Google. I feel very fortunate to have someone as talented as he is to run the slightly slimmed down Google, and this frees up time for me to continue to scale our aspirations." Unquote. After the restructuring, Larry Page will now head the new umbrella unit called Alphabet. Prime Minister Narendra Modi was among those who congratulated Pichai. Sundar Pichai now joins an elite league of over a dozen Indian origin persons who hold top posts at global corporations with a collective turnover of about $400 billion. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
We're at a quick break here, but still ahead. Former AAP leader Yogendra Yadav was arrested during farmers' protest rally in Delhi late last night. He was released just a few hours back. And Indian tennis star Sania Mirza gets the Rajiv Gandhi Khel Ratna Award, while cricketer Rohit Sharma gets nominated for the Arjuna Award.
Hello and welcome to State of the Economy. Today we have with us Mr. Manishankar Iyer.
The so-called Jaitley consensus has been railroaded. He wants to go down in history. He'll go down in history as the man who stopped the GST. Both the land acquisition bill and the GST bill are in the penumbra of doubt.
Watch Congress MP Manishankar Iyer articulate his views on GST. in State of the Economy on Rajya Sabha television.
Welcome back. Now, in the capital, former AAP leader and activist Yogendra Yadav was released from jail just hours back after a dramatic arrest late last night from Jantar Mantar for allegedly leading a farmers' protest march towards the PM's residence. 85 volunteers of the Swaraj Abhiyan were also held. Once released, Yadav alleged that he was manhandled and beaten up by Delhi police. But what came as a surprise was the support that Yadav got from none other than Arvind Kejriwal, with whom he had a bitter fallout only a few months back.
These are scenes from outside the Parliament Street police station in the national capital. Volunteers of the farmers' rights group Swaraj Abhiyan protesting against the arrest of their leader Yogendra Yadav late on Monday night. The former Aam Aadmi Party leader was arrested for allegedly leading the protest march towards the Prime Minister's residence despite objections raised by the Delhi police. After spending the night in police custody, Yadav alleged he was manhandled by the police, a charge vehemently denied by the Delhi Police Commissioner.
कि अंदर जाने के बाद हमें जान से मारने की धमकी दी। पार्लियामेंट स्ट्रीट के एसएचओ दिनेश कुमार ने दिल्ली के एमएलए पंकज पुष्कर और मुझे मारने की धमकी दी। कहा भड़ता बना दूंगा, कहा यहाँ वही चलेगा जो मैं चाहूंगा। सुप्रीम कोर्ट का कोई मतलब नहीं है।
पुलिस जो भी कार्य करती है कानून के दायरे में करती है। जब भी कोई कानून और व्यवस्था वाले जो इश्यूज होते हैं, हमारा हर कार्य कानून और दायरे में ही होता है, कानून के दायरे में होता है।
Delhi Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal was quick to condemn Yadav's arrest, much to the former Aam Aadmi Party leader's surprise.
योगेंद्र जी और उनके कार्यकर्ताओं के साथ जिस तरह से पुलिस ने बर्ताव किया, इसकी हम कड़े शब्दों में निंदा करते हैं और ये ठीक नहीं है, क्योंकि इस देश के अंदर शांतिपूर्वक प्रदर्शन करना संविधान के आर्टिकल 19 में उनका मौलिक अधिकार है, फंडामेंटल राइट है।
But when Aam Aadmi Party leader Sanjay Singh reached Jantar Mantar to join the protest, he was heckled by Yogendra Yadav supporters. On Monday, scores of farmers from across the country had planned to place an installation outside the Prime Minister's residence, demanding that the Delhi race course be converted into a farmers' memorial. Citing security reasons, the Delhi police detained several volunteers as well as Yogendra Yadav, who was leading the protest. With Anu Diwan, Bureau Inputs, Rajya Sabha TV.
Well, let's take you through some more national news updates in Nationwide. Security forces on Tuesday killed 2 militants who were holed up in South Kashmir's Pulwama district. The militants were killed several hours after a massive operation to nab them was launched. The militants had opened fire on the security personnel involved in the operation earlier this morning. The Bombay High Court has granted anticipatory bail to activist Teesta Setalvad and her husband Javed Anand. The activists were booked by the CBI under the Foreign Contribution Regulation Act, or FCRA, for allegedly collecting foreign funds. The court observed there was no need for custodial interrogation. The FIR was lodged after the Home Ministry found alleged discrepancies by 2 NGOs run by the couple. The Met Department has sounded an alert in Himachal Pradesh after heavy rains in the last 48 hours threw normal life out of gear. The districts of Mandi, Kulu, Una and Kangra are the worst affected, with rivers flowing above the danger mark. The administration has advised residents to stay away from swelling rivers. Rains are expected to continue for the next 2 days. Nearly a week after the Pawan Hans helicopter went missing in Arunachal Pradesh, the bodies of the 3 people on board the chopper have been found. The wreckage of the crashed chopper was located on Monday near the remote Kheti village of Tira district in the state. International news now. In Greece and its international lenders have clinched a multi-billion euro bailout agreement after marathon talks through the night. The agreement raises hopes that aid can be dispersed in time for a major debt repayment due in days. Here are the details.
The Greek government has announced that it has broadly struck an ambitious bailout deal with its creditors. It aims at securing around 86 billion euros over the next 3 years. This in return for radical economic reforms to be pushed through Parliament. The agreement was reached after marathon overnight talks in Athens. However, 2 or 3 small issues are pending.
What we have at the moment is a technical level agreement reached by the staff of the institutions and the Greek authorities on the ground following the weeks of negotiations. What we don't have at the moment is a political agreement, and that is what we would need. And as I said, the technical agreement has been reached in principle. There are some small details that still need to be finalized.
The country needs a deal by 20th of August when the country has to repay debt of about 3 billion euros to the European Central Bank. Greece will not be able to make that payment without funds emerging from the country's third bailout in just over 5 years. However, it is not clear when Athens could tap the first funds from a bailout.
Der DAX ist heute schwach gestartet. Wir sind aktuell 70 Punkte im Minus. Hauptgründe hierfür ist natürlich die Abwertung des chinesischen Yuan um 1,86%, was die stärkste Abwertung seit 20 Jahren.
With the deal agreed, Greece's parliament must now pass the measures required by creditors. Prime Minister Tsipras has managed to get support for the third bailout by relying on opposition parties. The deal is needed to keep the country in the Eurozone and avert bankruptcy. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
And finally, let's get you some sports news now in Sports Beat. Indian tennis ace Sania Mirza has been awarded the Rajiv Gandhi Khel Ratna Award by the Union Sports Ministry. Sania's name has been approved for the coveted award after the Sports Ministry earlier recommended her name. Sania won her career's first ever women's doubles Grand Slam title with a Swiss partner Martina Hingis in June this year. She also became the world #1 right before she won the grass court major. Indian cricketer Rohit Sharma has been nominated for the Arjuna Award. His name was announced as part of a list of 17 Arjuna awardees for this year prepared by the Sports Committee. Sharma scored a brilliant 264 runs against Sri Lanka last season, the highest ODI individual score ever at the Eden Gardens in Kolkata. He also holds the record of being the only batsman to have scored 2 ODI double hundreds. Meanwhile, in tennis, Liana Pace had a successful first match with his 101st doubles partner Andy Murray, beating the South African Jeremy Chardy and Kevin Anderson 6-3, 6-1 in the first round of the Rogers Cup. Murray and Pace faced just one breakpoint during the 61-minute match. The win also set up a first ATP World Tour level contest for the Scot against his older brother Jamie. Indian men's hockey team suffered its first defeat of the European Tour, losing 1-4 to Spain in the opening game of the 3-match series. The score was 1-1 at halftime, with the second half witnessing the home side playing brilliantly to score thrice. SV Sunil was the lone scorer for India. The series with Spain is the second and the final leg of the tour. India had clean sweep the 2-match first leg against France. And that's all we have for you on the news at 6. Coming up next is The Big Picture. Stay with us.